So, step one, we have to secularize our overall culture, because growing up in a spiritual religious environment makes us very vulnerable to cults. Because what you do is you go into a mainstream religion and you find out the preacher's corrupt, the imam's corrupt, the doctrine is corrupt, it's unfair. Or you grow up and you see your parents and y'all praying over y'all food and y'all going to church service, but then you come home and your father lives a contradictory lifestyle, your mother doesn't stand up. So you even though you've been indoctrinated to be a believer, to have faith, to be a person of faith, you find that the faith that you were raised in doesn't stand up to scrutiny. So you don't abandon faith because it's been so ingrained in you, you try to find the proper faith. So you'll find a lot of times people who were in cults, almost to a person, end up raised up in mainstream religion with mainstream religious values. Very rarely do you find a person who was not initially indoctrinated tend to be less vulnerable. I meet people in these Kemetic cults. I meet people in these Islamic or Black Hebrew Israelites, or these Eastern mystic cults, these little Buddhist or Hindu oriented centric cults. And you always find out secular people do get caught up in cults of personality, but that's another discussion. I'm talking mainly religious cults. You'll find that it was like, well, I was raised Presbyterian. I was raised, Baptist. So you're already predisposed to be tricked. And people think you can abandon religion while holding on to faith and belief. And that makes you conscious. But I have to say this all the time, even though people don't like to hear this, but spirituality is just religion for lazy people. It's just religion that takes away all the monetary and time constraints. You don't have to go to church. You don't have to give your 10% to the Lord. You don't have to restrict yourself in terms of sexuality or dress modestly. But at the core, you still believe there's some higher spiritual supernatural forces working in your life that impact you and that you can influence to act upon you in certain ways. Which just ain't the case. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If it were the case, I'd be the first to admit it. In the moment that anyone, in the more than 2,000 plus years of human existence, of Christianity or any of these other insane, inane religions, if you could demonstrate to me that God is real, that spiritual forces are real, that the universe somehow accepts our voices, accepts our requests, and somehow responds to us in any way, the moment it's demonstrated is the very moment I will say, hey, y'all, I was wrong as hell. So, a lot of times when we look at people in cults and we say, look at that crazy people, look at them funny clothes, look at that crazy stuff they're eating that weird diet, they're doing all that weird stuff. Just know that a lot of times if you are spiritual or if you're religion, or hey, I ain't really religious, but I know the Lord works in my life, understand that you laid the groundworks. You would not have cults if you didn't have mainstream religion. Mainstream religions and mainstream religious belief is the parent of these bastard cults. Secularize our community, secularize our culture. Number two, this is something that people tend to not understand. Something I used to believe. I used to believe that people would join cults because they had a low sense of self and low self-esteem. Well, that's what I'd see. I'd see the Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not going to call them Jehovah's Wickedness or Jehovah's Idiots. I'm going to say what they is. They are Jehovah's Witnesses. Or I would see people in these other cults like the Nation of Islam, the Asar Set Society, the Bahami Temple, the United Nation of Islam. I would see various, because you would have people, because people have such a low understanding of African spirituality. There would be a lot of people who could come and say, well, this is African religion, this is Yoruba, this is Akan, and they could tell people whatever they want because people had no knowledge of it. So there would be some Yaya or Baba, Babalao that would come, and I knew there was this sister in Harlem that was giving these people these spiritual baths and doing all this weird stuff. And I'm like, this isn't really Yoruba or Akan. I don't know why she's calling herself a priestess and selling these people these artifacts and setting up these shrines, and she was making good money and selling people these goat milk bath things that they put, and she was just making it up, but she called it African. She dressed African. She was a beautiful black woman, so people would just eat it up, but it was just a cult. It was not truly Yoruba faith or even Bodun. It was just whatever she said it was, and people didn't have their own source to verify or to challenge what she was saying, but it sounded really good. We are divine spiritual beings, and you can cleanse your aura and all this. And I'm like, man, she's got everything from Buddhism, Hinduism, some offshoots of Christianity and with the modesty and stuff, and then she sprinkles in some African folklore and mysticism and terms, and then she goes and gets some herbs, and all of a sudden she done made up a religion, a whole religion. I actually, dated her daughter for a while. And she would tell me about this, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And she was like, you need to come to my mom's home and get a spiritual bath. And I'm like, no, you need to get out of my face with that nonsense. So, of course, this is when I was in college. So there you have a lot of African cults. And a lot of black people who think, yeah, I ain't with Christianity. That's the white man's religion. I ain't with Islam. That's the Arab man's religion. I'll go practice an African religion. But you're not practicing an African religion. You're engaged in a cult that has African overtones or African imagery or African symbols. But it's essentially just some insane cult that has no real connections to the traditions developed in Africa over centuries. So you have these cults, these Christian cults, these Islamic cults. And I used to think to myself, The people involved in these cults must have really low self-esteem. They must have a really low sense of self to allow someone to tell them how to live their lives, to totally transform their lives. And you see this one guy, one day he comes up and he's dressed in sneakers and sweatpants and a hoodie and a baseball cap, and the next day he looks like a Bedouin nomad from the Arabian desert. And one day, and he's eating chew sticks and drinking bitters and talking gibberish. And I'm like, man, there must have been something really empty in him, and they must have, tore him down or broke him down and made him think he was less than nothing in order to have this man walking around Brooklyn looking like a damn fool. But I was mistaken. And if you think that people who join cults because they have low self-esteem and a low sense of self, you are mistaken. The vast majority of people that join cults have an inflated sense of self. That makes them vulnerable to cults. And I had to go back and think. My personal friends who joined cult, Kanefra Aminabah, he had an extremely high sense of self. Where these people who join cults generally think, I am special, I am above and apart from everyone else. And now this cult realizes, so the cult doesn't really often tear people down, it builds them up, saying that you have a special understanding, you have a special position, you have a special enlightenment, you have a special aura. You see these people, they're all walking around, they're asleep, they don't know. They haven't been touched, they're not divine, they're not enlightened. But you the man, you the woman. So you come over here with this special knowledge, and we got secrets, we got rituals, we got things that the average person just don't know, but you're worthy, and everyone else isn't worthy. And that speaks to certain people. And they go in and do these rituals, and they say, oh, in a past life, you were a queen. Or they go and say, oh, you're going to be elevated to a special status. Like my homeboy, when he went, he spent $10,000, gave this religious code of $10,000, and lo and behold, he was supposed to be initiated into the priesthood. And as he was going through his priestly training, another guy came in and had gotten a major settlement. A 7-figure settlement, and he gave like $100,000 to the organization, and they kicked my homie to the curb with his little 10 G's and took his position and his status away and gave it to the other dude, and so literally sold his status that was given to him by our divine ancestors. And that's when he finally was like, this stuff is just a hustle. And I'm like, yo, you think? After you paid them 5 G's to not just for your name change, just for them to discover what your name was. They had to get the birth date and time. They had to know the placing of the moon when your mother was born, the placing and position of the moon when your father was born, and they had to know the placing and position of the moon when you were born. So you had to get your mother's date, birth, time, and then they had to do an astrological chart on your mother, astrological chart on your father, then do an astrological chart on you. Fortunate for him, he didn't have any siblings, so that wasn't they didn't have to spend as much money as he thought. But it was this whole big thing. And then he said, yo, the shaman or the what would you call the Shechem has discovered my name. I'm like, what's your name? Well, he can't tell me my name. I just only paid him 5 G's for him to discover my name. But now I need the naming ritual and the name renaming ceremony to actually have my name revealed to me. I'm like, and how much is that? Oh, that's another 8 G's. Like, word? Yeah. So he didn't invite me to his ritual. This dude was my best friend. He didn't invite me to his ritual, even though it was the cult was a vegan cult. And he went down to Oklahoma to have his ritual. And I was like, I was offended that he didn't invite me. I fully understood why he didn't invite me. Because I'd be there eating up their tofu and making fun of them. But he didn't invite me. And he came back and was like, and he said that whenever he says his name, it's a vibration. Whenever his name is spoken to him or he speaks his own name, there's a vibration sent out into the universe. It is a meditation and a chant. And then he had to buy all these herbs and these tinctures and bull of rye. And it was a hustle. But this guy always had a high sense of self. I'm like, he never had low self-esteem. He thinks he's the greatest guy in the world. But then when he joined the cult, I mean, like, even though he's always had an ego and a high sense of self, he must have had some emptiness inside or some low self-esteem issues, and he just really hit it. No, they didn't speak to his low self-esteem. They spoke to his inflated sense of self. So how do you help people and combat cultism? By keeping it real with people, by trying to balance people. I ain't saying tear down people's self-esteem, but don't be a sycophant for others. Be real with other people. Praise them when they accomplish stuff and be real with them when they show in their behinds. We have this thing where I don't want to be around no negativity. Yeah, be around a little negativity. A little negativity will help you. You can't have all positivity. It can't be sunshine every day. You won't be a complete or whole person if it's all sunshine every day. So a little struggle, a little challenge. So being self-critical and being critical of your friends. Being a true friend, being a true companion, being a true lover, being a true partner. Whatever your relationship is to another person, you be someone who provides balance. That will say, hey, that was a wonderful thing you did. Or hey, you on some BS right now. You need to check yourself. Because this whole thing, bigging up everybody, do you, and elevation, and constant elevation, this positivity obsession. Oh, I don't say good things, hyping each other up. Yas queen, black boy joy. I'm not against any of that, but it needs to be balanced. And I understand how it is for black folks because we got the media, the society, hell, our beloved rappers on the radio every day telling us how they gonna shoot us, kill us, pimp us. And so I understand there's a lot of negativity that bombards us, but I ain't talking about that kind of negativity. I'm talking about honesty that comes from love, criticism that comes with affection. I'm talking about that refinement, where sometimes you got to chisel away at something to get to the pure core of something. So there's different. I'm not saying be a negative person. I'm saying be a complete person. I'm telling you that people will benefit from that. Many people would have never entered a cult saying that I am a divine being and special specimen. If somebody says, hey man, your afro is cooking and you must eat half the time, check yourself. Help the people around you engage in proper self-reflection and ongoing self-criticism. And if you're doing self-criticism and self-refinement, you won't seek some outside source to validate your delusions of your grandeur. This is real. This is real. Another way, I've got a long list here. I'm not going to get to all of them. Another way to combat cults is to keep the cult member in your life. One thing cults seek to do is isolate their members. And I know how unbelievably annoying a cult member can be. When one of my best friends joined a cult, I could not have a straightforward conversation with them. I once went to my homeboy and I'm like, listen, I'm helping you out here. You stand with me, woo, woo, woo. You have to kick in and help out. And the dude's like, I can't do this. I am not an ab man. I am an asar man. I am an ascendant. You want me to sweep floors and clean toilets? You want an ascendant man? Just my presence is still like on some Jay-Z stuff. You don't know the spiritual work. Because some dude told me that the spiritual work he does in my house is better than the rent. He keeps demons and low-level vibrations out of the house. And he would tell me when I'm putting a bill for him, you one of the lowest people I know. You're on some of the lowest vibrations, man. And you know, I don't pay rent, I don't clean, but I do work in this house. I do spiritual work. I do energy work in this house. And he said the universe is really effed up right now. And you don't understand the forces working against you because your third eye is crusted over. So I'm carrying this burden. So while I go off to work, you sit and play my PlayStation and keep demons out of my house. And so I am just saying all that to know, I mean, I got stories for days. Because being a member of the conscious community, a damn near quarter of all the people I know or I have worked with over the years were members of cults. Either going into, a member of, or coming out of cults. Cults are everywhere. Some cults tell their members, hey, keep it on the down low. Don't nobody have to know. So you don't even know you're dealing with somebody that is fully involved in a cult. But one thing I want to tell you, as hard as it is, I wanted to kick this dude to the curb. If you really care about somebody that's in a cult, stay engaged with them. Keep talking about them. Ask them about their stuff they're doing. Not just to criticize, but to truly learn. What are you doing? Well, we're waiting for the ascension. What is the ascension? What do they require you to do? Why the hell do they need your money? If a divine mystical force is coming from outer space to fly you away, you got to buy a ticket? What the hell are the aliens going to do with your money? They use US dollars on the planet Umtar? So stay engaged with them. Even when they try to, if it's somebody, especially family members or people you take really personal, you have to work to stay engaged. Because the thing is to write people off. And when you write them off, when you write not just 25%, trying to be nice, but it's more than 25%. Even when I came here to New York, to Chicago from New York, I'm just going to leave it at 25%. And this is just an off-the-cuff survey. But anyway, stay engaged with them. Continue to talk to them. Listen to their nonsense and their gibberish. And if somebody wants to say, hey, I want to do a reading for you, you ain't got to go for that stuff. You ain't got to let them put them funky oils on you or stick, bamboo reeds between your toes. You ain't got to fall for the okie doke. But at least maintain the human contact. Let them have some contact with the real world. People who are not just feeding them, if you care enough. Now, and if they aren't damaging, because some of these cults, like the black Hebrew Israelites, the people become violent and vicious. I've had Hebrew Israelites say when Moses or Jesus ascends the mountain and blows the ram horn, he's going to decapitate me. Because there will come a time where the holy ram horn is born and they know that Jesus' return is upon us and it's time to kill. So some of these cults, when they join and they become violent, you have to look out for your extended family. You have to look out for yourself. But fortunately, the vast majority of cults aren't violent and don't motivate their members to violence. They just disrupt the individual's life and extract as much time and resources from that individual as they can. So most cults are parasitic to their members only. They tend not to be as harmful to people outside the cult, like Jehovah's Witness. They only prey upon their members. They don't tend to attack people. They don't get entangled into outside things. They're not going to come and try to influence legislation. But some cults, like these Hebrew Israelites, and on the south side of Chicago, 1,000 Hebrew Israelites put on purple and marched in the streets. And I keep seeing black women saying, because they were chanting, protect black women, protect black children. A lot of black women are like, this is what we need more of. And I ask every time I see this pop up on social media, especially if it's a woman sharing this, I'm like, do you know anything about their doctrine? Because they might as well be marching down the street saying, protect black homes, protect black cars, protect black shoes, because women are nothing more than breeding stock, than living, walking incubators for their divine seed. They don't see you as fully human. So when they say protect you, that is in terms of protecting property, not allowing you to go into the world and achieve your dreams, but to bring you into submission and to bury you under some toxic doctrine. But I tell you, if you do care about a person in a cult, I know the first thing you to do is say, hey, this person is lost. But as many people I know that are in cults, I know just as many people that are out of cults. They will come out of it. And a lot of times they come out of it without any money, without any property, where they come out of these cults completely having lost all of their intimate relationships and their intimate connections. So I will say to you, when you find someone in a cult, just know they will at one point regain their sanity. Most people do. Cults always are recruiting because they understand that the way that the cult is structured, they have to continually recruit and continually replenish their numbers. If you know anything about it, if you got a cult operating in your neighborhood, just go to one of their services or one of their events one day. And it'll be all different faces that were there last year and the year before that. But a lot of times people who want to exit the cult are like, man, I've been in this cult for 5 years. My mama don't talk to me no more because I told her she was a demonic spirit. My woman done left me because I tried to get her to submit and become a divine womb for my divine seed. My children don't talk to me no more because I didn't spend all of my money and resources when I could have been helping them get established in life. I gave it to the shaman, to the babalao, to the shechem, to the minister. So a lot of times people are like, I don't have nothing but the cult. So a lot of people would exit these cults if they would simply know. I got people that didn't give up on me, even though I gave up on myself. Even though I was showing my natural black ass, talking natural black BS, there's people that still ride with me. Because, let me tell you, one of the biggest problems with cults. African people are about to face some major calamities. From climate change to right-wing development. And as calamities are faced, we're going to need people who are rational and grounded to understand the problems, to construct viable solutions and enact those solutions. And what I see happening, even people that when I moved here that I was organizing with in the city of Chicago, they're seeing hurricanes and they're seeing earthquakes and they were like, these are the last days. They're not saying these are tectonic plates. Like I told this one brother who left one cult and then now he's starting his own cult, his end of days last time of revelation cult. When I met him, he was coming out of the Black Hebrew cult. And now he's got this end of days divine signs from the universe cult that he's going to be the leader of. And he was like, well, look at the earthquakes. I said, I will look at an earthquake if you can show me an earthquake that is not directly related to the movement of tectonic plates. Because every single earthquake that you claim is divine has a geological source. If you can show me an earthquake in areas, because there are areas that scientists have mapped out all over the earth and said these areas are vulnerable to earthquakes and these areas aren't. Why does God always use the tectonic plates and geological conditions to create earthquakes when he could just make one anywhere? So show me a non-scientifically explainable earthquake. Brother, see, that's the thing. They got you looking for something. So what I'm saying is I'm seeing this. And if you start paying attention and looking at things from this point of view, you will also see. If you look, there are a lot of cults, existing cults and new cults that are taking advantage of the economic insecurity, the environmental degradation, the lack of opportunity, and even the acts of racist atrocities to tell black folks we are in the end times, or there is some great awakening, or some great slumber, or some great thing happened, and people are afraid, people are insecure. The U.S. government has spent the last half century utterly destroying our political and secular leaders, from Malcolm X to Fred Hampton, undermining our political organizations, so we no longer have the political, cultural, economic, or even the black radical formations. Only thing they left us is the same thing they'd allowed us to have on the plantation. We can have good old time religion. You can't have good schools, you can't have viable institutions, but you can have all the God and nonsense mysticism you can take. And the cults are taking advantage of this. And if the time comes where we have economic collapse, ecological collapse, and uprisings of innocent agencies and institutions and organizations outside of our communities that decide it's time to go Nazi, it's time to go genocide, and you got people standing around mumbling and vibrating and meditating instead of taking direct, deliberate, rational, secular actions that's dividing us into all these little camps, all these spookish camps of these silly cults, we are primed for disaster. If you go back and look at other people who come on, even if you go to the Holocaust, you'll find that the Jews, when they came under Nazi attack, became more religious. And the more religious they became, the more vulnerable to the Nazis they became. It wasn't until they started enacting rational, secular. That's why in Israel right now, the nation for the Jews, you don't see the Orthodox, the Hasidim, the fundamentalists. All the people who run Israel are secular. They have their own laws. They don't follow the Torah because they understood this religiosity and cultism does not serve a people. Cultism and religiosity makes you comfortable with death and destruction. It makes you think that death and destruction is the will of the divine, the will of the universe, the will of God. So it ain't just you fight cultism because you think, well, I don't want my people caught up in that mess. You fight cultism because our survival depends on it. Bro Diallo Show. Oh, did I mention I have super chat or whatever that is? You can now make contributions if you follow the live feed. You can kick in there. There are many opportunities to shout out to Chauncey. Made a contribution this morning on the super chat to help sustain the Bro Diallo Show, to help me continue to broadcast on the airways and across the world. So I appreciate any and everyone that's able to make contributions. If you can't make a contribution, you can subscribe to the YouTube. You can share the show. You can share the whatchamacallit. What you call the thing? You can share the links. You can share the podcast.